This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
It's going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're gonna acknowledge me.
Hey, what's going on, guys? And welcome back to WWE Retro on the WWE Podcast on this Friday, May 19th. 1 week away, 8 days to be exact, from the Crown Jewel. Or I always say Crown Jewel when there's Saudi Arabia. The Night of Champions main event. It is going to prove to be a very, very good one. I am excited to see what they have in store for us, as we're going to get a new World Heavyweight Champion. The first World Heavyweight Champion since 2013. Almost 10 years since we've had a World Heavyweight Champion. And, you know, last week I came on here, I talked about the importance and the lineage of that World Heavyweight Championship. And I think that tonight, or today, depending when you're listening to this, we're going to go back and listen, or not listen, but yeah, I guess listen, and review the time when the World Heavyweight Championship was at its peak. And it also is relevant because the draft just took place. And that's why we are going to be reviewing the 2004 WWE Draft that took place on March 22nd, 2004. Now, at this point, you were 2 years into the brand split. They had introduced the brand extension in March of 2002. 2004, just post WrestleMania 20, and there were a lot of dominoes to fall. To kind of set the landscape for you, on the Raw side, it was highlighted by Triple H along with Evolution, Shawn Michaels, and a newly crowned World Heavyweight Champion in Chris Benoit. You also had the likes of RVD, Chris Jericho, Christian, Booker T, Kane, and a pretty good crop of talent over there. On the SmackDown side, you had the WWE Champion Eddie Guerrero, you had the APA, Kurt Angle, The Big Show, The Undertaker, and so on and so forth. So this was very significant because this was the first time that they were going to be shifting the rosters around since they brought in the brand extension. They had not once done a trade like this in the 2 years leading up to this night. So that's 2 years that you had given stars the chance to establish themselves on their respective brands. So for Raw GM Eric Bischoff, SmackDown GM Paul Heyman, it was really going to be a night that really shook the foundation of both of their brands, respectively. And it really kind of drove home the identity that both brands had, because they had the exact same superstars for pretty much 24 months. So it was a very, very interesting night in this regard. What would happen? What was going to go on? We had never seen anything like this in WWE. And that's why when it was time for SmackDown to make their first selection, it felt all that more significant.
Paul Heyman still subject to the effect
Sorry, before we get any further, how awesome is Paul Heyman? Like, this is 19 years ago, and he just has not missed a beat on the mic. And him as SmackDown general manager, he comes out in a neck brace and the whole shebang. He really played this role well. You know, he's awesome as the special counsel to Roman Reigns, but he really did a good job as the SmackDown GM during this era. But let's get through it as we get to SmackDown's first selection.
I will deal with The Undertaker in my own personal way. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the good news. It is time for Paul Heyman's SmackDown to procure its very first superstar away from Monday Night Raw.
Joy on the face of Heyman. He's loving this.
Mr. Bischoff, I'm so terribly sorry, but Paul Heyman's SmackDown has to make the announcement that one of the premier groups on Raw has been broken off.
You don't think it's... Who knows?
Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Heyman's SmackDown hereby welcomes Renee Dupree.
So Renee Dupree of La Resistance, I don't know if you guys remembered them. They were a faction group of three with Sylvain Grenier and Robert Conway, aka Robert Conway, that were originally from France, and then they got rebranded from Quebec, which was especially funny to me as someone who has been born and raised and continue to live in Quebec. And he goes to SmackDown. And at this time, Renee Dupree really was... Oh, sorry about that. But... he really was viewed as one of the future big pieces here in WWE. He had a great physique, he had a great look, and La Resistance would continue on with Conway and Grenier. And Dupree would get a run on SmackDown, somewhat of a forgettable run. He won the tag team titles with, I believe his name was Kenzo Suzuki, if you guys can remember that name. But I believe Renee Dupree even has a podcast now. So a guy who was forgettable a lot, but at this point in time, he really was a big piece going forward, or at least they thought so. So they break up a member of Raw's tag team, and now it's time for Eric Bischoff to do the same for SmackDown.
We're back, ladies and gentlemen. The draft lottery continues on this Wonder King, and that was the last time we'll ever see Stone Cold salute here on Raw. It could very well happen. Hard to think of, but it could happen here tonight.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, here to make the first pick for Raw is General Manager Eric Bischoff.
Come on, Eric.
And Paul, I was just curious. You know, if you're so convinced that SmackDown is a superior brand, have you asked yourself lately why Mr. McMahon chose Raw here tonight to hold this lottery?
This is going to be interesting, JR. What do you think? Luck of the draw, King. That's what it is. It's a lottery. There's a smile.
Well, Paul, I've got great news for you. You're no longer going to have to deal with the issue as to whether or not to call them the world's greatest tag team or the self-proclaimed greatest tag team, because Eric Bischoff and Raw have the only definition for them now, that is ancient history. Raw is pleased to announce the acquisition of a fine young
So, again, think about how long ago we are now. Shelton Benjamin viewed as a real up-and-comer here. And to be honest, he really had a good run on Raw. You know, he wins the Intercontinental Championship. He was one of the shining stars in the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match. It really was a big selection. So you have a young up-and-comer going to SmackDown in Rene Dupree, a young up-and-comer coming to Raw in Shelton Benjamin. Ways that you should really utilize the draft to really try and find those breakout stars and kind of break up tag teams. Maybe one of the criticisms of this draft being that they didn't utilize that enough. They didn't break up enough tag teams. A lot of groups were drafted together. So the next pick for SmackDown, it's Mark Jindrak. The following pick for Raw is Nydia. Very inconsequential selections, to say the least. So now you get to round 3. And round 3 is when things really, really get shaken up, especially for Eric Bischoff and Monday Night Raw.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is once again time for Paul Heyman's SmackDown to take a piece of Raw history away from Eric Bischoff. Whoa! Oh my! The Doctor! The United States Champion! What's John Cena doing here? The fucking arm is up in this piece. Paul Heyman was about to make another pick. John Cena's in the house. Yo.
Before we go any further, so weird to see John Cena come out, cheered beyond belief, Doctor of Thugonomics, first time as a US champion. He had just won it at WrestleMania 20. Absolutely so cool to see Cena. And I know, like, I've never been the biggest fan of John Cena. I know a lot of you probably weren't as well. But you really get to appreciate what he meant for this business when you look back on it and see what he did for everyone. And having him interrupt Paul Heyman before Paul Heyman makes a massive selection is a really cool throwback, to say the least.
Oh, and if you draft me, save your t-shirts. I ain't kissing your butts. We in the D, baby! So you can choke on D's nuts. General manager, but I'm making the next pick.
Hey, listen, you're not supposed to do that. This is my show.
I'm giving you one ball, but you still got no.
The ever-controversial U.S. champion. Hopefully Cena's got the Midas touch.
Think about how squeaky clean John Cena is now and has been for the last 10 years. And think about that promo he just cut as he makes the selection for Paul Heyman. Just so crazy to see the difference in characters. But let's get to Heyman's selection finally.
Yes. What? Is this legal? This ain't a real pick.
No, it's a real pick. That's your pick. Stick with it. You got no choice.
He picked it. I did it.
You pick right now. That's yours. You own it. Take it.
You're lucky I'm an injured man. If I wasn't an injured man, what I would do to you is something that you ain't.
Who is?
You sure you want me to read this out loud?
Yes, I want you to read it out loud. Would you please?
Well, Mr. Bischoff, since you insisted that I take this pick,
So a huge selection. Triple H going to SmackDown. Now, I don't know if this was if this was intentionally done to swerve everyone or what exactly happened, but Triple H never even made it to SmackDown in the end. He was traded back to Raw after the draft. So I don't know if they just regretted the decision and went back or if it was always meant to just kind of shock everyone. But in the moment, people were absolutely floored because he had been a staple of Monday Night Raw, had just lost the World Heavyweight Championship, the leader of the most dominant faction in Evolution. Was just really shocking at that time. But like I said, he was eventually traded back to Monday Night Raw. And I guess I really don't know what their plan was here. I have to be honest. But Triple H would actually main event this Monday Night Raw in a WWE Championship match against Eddie Guerrero that we'll get to a bit later on. So Raw's next pick is Rhino. Not that consequential. SmackDown gets Rob Van Dam, who was then the World Tag Team Champions with Booker T. Tajiri goes to Monday Night Raw. Teddy Long goes to SmackDown, and he's important too because he would become a longtime GM of SmackDown. And then Raw gets Edge. Edge, who had not been seen in in-ring competition for about 14 months at this point. So that was a massive get for Monday Night Raw. And then SmackDown gets Spike Dudley, rather inconsequential. And then there were some backroom deals before I get to the final selection of Monday Night Raw. SmackDown would get the Dudley Boys, Booker T, Rico, and Miss Jackie. And Raw would get A-Train, Chuck Palumbo, and get back Triple H, like I had mentioned earlier. So we get to Monday Night Raw's last pick. And this one was not only a shocking draft pick, but what happens 2 sequences right after following the selection made it arguably even more crazy of a segment.
For my next, I can't believe this. What? I mean, Vince McMahon said everyone. That means everyone is eligible for the lottery draft. And Who is it? Say it already. Get it over with. Paul Heyman. Oh my God. Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman. The celebration of the SmackDown locker room. Give it Barry Bischoff. Paul Heyman coming to the locker room. Heyman also from this last pick has been drafted to Raw. Read it and weep, Heyman. Look at this. The superstars in the Raw locker room. Now, it just so happens, Paul, I mean, this is going to work out great because as it turns out, I could really use some help. In fact, I've got some laundry that I need to get taken care of. I got a car needs to be washed. I mean, I got a lot of things that I need to take care of. But Paul, I can't think of anybody better than you.
You know, I built ECW with both you and Vince on my back. I made SmackDown what it is today. Paul Heyman SmackDown. And I could do the same for Raw, Mr. Bischoff, except I'm unwilling to appear before these animals that you call a Monday Night Raw audience. And most of all, Eric, I would never sell my soul to a piece of slime like you. So let me spell this out for you so that even Eric Bischoff can understand it. Eric Bischoff, screw you! I quit!
Well,
So a returning Edge who comes to the ring and spears Eric Bischoff after Paul Heyman quits. So Paul Heyman's no longer the GM of SmackDown. He quit his WWE job, kayfabe. Edge comes back, spears Eric Bischoff. And one thing is that the WWE Network often changes guys' theme songs. Like at this point, Edge was using the Rob Zombie Never Gonna Stop Me theme. And when he actually came out, the pop was massive. But I guess they don't have the rights to use it on the network. So they dubbed it over with his original theme from Eric, Edge and Christian, and therefore the return and the pop really doesn't seem loud. But if you go get the actual footage, it was deafening. So Paul Heyman, no longer the GM on SmackDown, Edge returning to Raw or debuting on Raw in a massive, massive way, and then all of the sudden you have a huge main event that nobody would have ever thought in Eddie Guerrero versus Triple H for the WWE Championship, as Triple H for a moment was part of the SmackDown roster. And just as in classic Triple H fashion at this time, Evolution really tried to get involved. But when they tried to get involved, they were now dealing with a brand new crop of superstars they never dealt before in the SmackDown roster.
Put the game away! It's the second vertical suplex! Get Eddie Guerrero, get his hat trick! Get Guerrero do the three amigos here! This is vintage Eddie Guerrero! There it is! Eddie connects! Eddie Guerrero's gonna do it! Eddie Guerrero! Son, big, there's no doubt about it! Evolution down here! The former teammates of Triple H, and then the game's gonna steal a WWE title. Why is Flair and Batista ringside? I mean, they're wrong. This is the SmackDown title. Look at this. Flair and Batista trying to help Triple H steal the WWE Championship. And hey, look at this. Hey, Cena Mysterio from SmackDown. Here we go. Camera away on Batista. Oh, man. Bringing Triple H in the ring. Let's see if H has got the title. Look at Flair. Holding on the title. Look. Shawn Michaels. Sweet Chin music. Sweet Chin music by Michaels. And the referee didn't see it. Look at Michaels with a punch over the top. What has Shawn Michaels done? He's knocked out Triple H. I can't believe this. Eddie Guerrero going up top. You gotta be kidding me. Hey, look at this. Wait a minute. That's Christian. The referee calling for the bell. Oh, yeah. Rob Van Dam. Van Dam, we just got SmackDown tonight. Oh, Van Dam's Van Dam's sitting right in already. Van Dam, look at this. What the hell? It's all wrong. Talk about combustible organs. Here comes
So Raw goes off the air with a massive SmackDown versus Raw brawl led by Steve Austin at the end, who was the then sheriff of Monday Night Raw. And, you know, we always talk about how, like, the Raw versus SmackDown stuff is overblown current day in WWE. But this was a moment in time where it really felt special because you never saw them cross paths, ever. This was the first draft in 2 years, the first draft in existence of the brand split. So this really felt important. Now, there wasn't any monumental shifts. Obviously, Triple H goes to SmackDown for a brief second, but then gets traded back to Raw. You have the Dudley Boys changing brands, Booker T and RVD, Shelton Benjamin, Rene Dupree. Nothing major, right? Like, no monumental trades. But still, making some trades did feel important. You got a breakout star in some capacity in Shelton Benjamin. You got a breakout star in some capacity in Rene Dupree. You know, you still gain a lot from separating the brands, and I really hope WWE is going to stick to their own rules here moving forward. And this was looking back, it just shows that when you really do adhere to your own rules, it could mean a ton in the grand scheme of things. And I hope that they really do this here. And you know what? You don't have to do it every year. You could do it every 2 years. I think 3 would maybe be a bit long, but, like, you know, they just did it this year, 1.5 years. That's not too bad. Now, albeit they were breaking their own rules a lot of the time, so maybe that's why they were able to wait so long. But I really do think there's a major benefit to this, adhering to your own rules, and this is a case in point of it. Anyway, guys, that's all I got for you today. I hope you enjoyed the 2004 WWE Draft. As always, you can get me on Twitter at AdaMarco25. You can get Matt on Twitter at Wrestling_audio, or you can email him each and every week for the WWE Podcast Mailbag. Anyway, guys, I hope you have a great weekend. I'll be back on Monday with Matt, and I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.